Welcome to the Design Dash podcast, your guide to designing a life you love. Join us as we explore the keys to living the life you want without compromise. Welcome to the Design Dash podcast, your guide to designing a life that you love. We're going to start today, as we always do, by thanking our good friends at Monogram Appliances. They are a longtime partner for us here at Design Dash and also for our design firm, Laura U Design Collective. And we absolutely love them. They believe in the main pillars that we as creatives also believe in, which are materials, performance, and ownership. They uphold their commitment to high quality and innovation, and they just have the most wonderful team. I think they also believe in how important relationships are, especially in the design industry, but really just in general. And that's why we absolutely love working with Monogram. So thank you, Monogram, for sponsoring the podcast.
Yeah. And today we have something a little different. The biggest thing being that Melissa and I are in the same room. Yeah, we're here together. And normally you're going to see us in two different screens because I'm in Aspen, Colorado. Melissa's in Houston, Texas. But today we're in the Houston studio. So this is the Laura U Design Collective studio. I'm usually here once a month, and here we are right now. So today's podcast, we actually don't have a guest, so that's another difference. We are just going to chat it up about business travel and traveling as creative entrepreneurs. What does that look like? What are some of the things that we do? So we're just going to spill on all things travel.
And we just got back from a great trip. So I think one of the things first about being in the design industry is that you get to go to really wonderful places for your travel. And so we actually just got back from Paris. So I think we'll use a lot of examples from Paris and how wonderful that trip was. And but you can really take great business trips everywhere. I was telling Laura earlier, one of the best conferences I'd ever been to actually happens in Boston. And Boston's a really cool city. It's a cool place to have a conference. I've been there for Unbound, which is what HubSpot puts on. And I mean, any industry that you're in, I think you can benefit from going to this conference. It's very expensive, but very worth it. And Paris is also very expensive.
And also very worth it. Yeah. And so I think, I don't know, if you're like us or like me, one of the big reasons that I wanted to be in the design industry and own my own firm is because I do love to travel. Yeah. And so I chose a creative industry intentionally a long time ago because I wanted that travel very integrated into my lifestyle. And I felt like if I could tie it into my business, then even better. And so when I started, I was working for a design firm. This is before I launched my own firm. I intentionally chose to work for a design firm that did international interiors. And so they only focused on destination interiors. We were doing residences abroad. And so that was, I think, what really showed me that this is possible. So you can be a creative entrepreneur and travel a ton. So so like Melissa was saying, we just got back from Paris, like literally a week ago, maybe. So this is very fresh. And so what we wanted to really cover today, kind of 5 top things. What are our things? What are we talking about?
I think I have maybe 7 or 8.
Okay, fine. 7.
Overexert ourselves. But let's start out with the types of business travel, because I want to say this first. So I haven't been in the design industry my whole entire life. If you love traveling for work, become a designer, because you guys get to go to the best places, and the vendors will wine and dine you like you would not believe. Like they will host you for a 2-star Michelin dinner.
That's amazing.
That doesn't happen in every industry. But we can talk about the types of business travel because you get invited to a lot. Unfortunately, we're not able to make it to everything. So what do we like to say yes to and what do we say no to?
Yeah, that's a good place to start. And sometimes it's really hard because, like I said, we just got back from Paris. That was our January trip. Mm-hmm. Melissa and I both have young kids. So we're not just going to pick up and go to every single thing. But I still do want to pick up and go to some things. So I try to do no more than 1 a month, which is still a lot. Yeah. It's still a lot. But for example, I got invited in February. There's 2 big conferences. One that's happening in Cabo San Lucas for one of our vendors, and it's going to be amazing and beautiful. And then another one's happening towards the end of the month. It's Kitchen and Bath Industry Show, and that's happening in Vegas, which is also really fun. So do I do both? Do I do none? Do I choose one? I did not go to Cabo just because the timing wasn't right this year. It would have been wonderful. K-Biz is on the fence because I have other business travel this month. But how do we decide what to say no to? So at some point, I feel like we built a matrix that we never used.
I know. We kind of just go by gut feeling. It really has to be something that, first of all, we want to be there. Like, we want to be at that location. I mean, there are some things, like if you're getting invited to the middle of nowhere and you're like, gosh, there's nothing else that I can do there, it's an easy no. But sometimes we'll go to North Carolina, which maybe isn't the most immediate yes, but we get to meet so many cool people there. There's so many fun things that we get to do while we're there too. So I think it's a good mix of, can we market it? Like, can we share this on social media, and can it get us more business? That's probably the number one thing that I'm taking a look at. But also, like, second to that is, are we going to have fun doing it? Like, do we actually want to do this? Is it authentic to us? Like, does it make sense organically for us to do it? Everybody can tell if something's forced. So we really don't want, not like anybody's forcing us to go to Mexico. So that's a yes. But
that's a yes. Typically would have been a big yes, but yeah, stars down the line.
But sometimes, like, people will be like, oh, you really got to go to New York, which New York is great, but it's a hard thing to travel to, especially I think like that market happens in September, and it's really just in the midst of all of these other things. So I would say, can we market it? Is it something that we can use? Are we going to learn something new there is a big one as well. So we go to a lot of furnishings markets. Are we going to see something new that we really enjoy? Are there going to be good people there?
The networking is a big one for me. Like, who's there? Am I going to get in front of our vendor reps, of course, because those are the immediate relationships, like that's the front line. But are the owners of the companies that we're actually sourcing from going to be there? Are the creative directors going to be there, so we can talk about, the inspiration behind the lines that we're then talking to our clients about? Also, media. I'm always really interested to see what media is going to be there. So, for example, we had an amazing dinner with a lovely person from House Beautiful. And so, like, which is if you're not in the design industry, that's a big shelter magazine for our industry. So it's those kind of connections that we have to think about. Are we going to be able to make those? Like, what are we actually doing?
Right. We really just want to make sure it's worth it. Because like Laura said, I mean, obviously we have other lives. we have children. And so it's hard to be able to pull away. It's got to be really good.
Yep. Agreed.
So we don't do a lot.
Cost is a big consideration.
Cost is also a big concern.
We budget for that, though. Like, Paris is not inexpensive. And we're going to talk about in a minute, like credit cards and points and all of that too, and how you can leverage that to have really great travel. But cost is a big consideration too. Like, for me, it's expensive to go to High Point, North Carolina. It's probably as expensive to go to High Point, which is where the huge furniture market is twice a year. It's probably as expensive to go there as it is to go to Paris, to be honest. Like, it's expensive.
Just because your travel is...
Well, I'm coming from the middle of nowhere, from Aspen, so you can't go direct really anywhere. But yeah, and it takes a full day to travel there, so it's almost like going international. It's just as hard. But that's a market that's really worth it for my industry, because all the huge manufacturers are there. The media comes. If you're wanting to do like licensed furniture lines, for example, or product lines, the people that you need to be in front of are there. So it's those kind of considerations too.
Again, what's worth it to you? And it may be different, what's worth it to you than what's worth it to us. But those are our top ones. So we already talked about it, but like booking, because it is expensive. So now we've got to get that credit card out and book that flight.
Oh, God. Yes. And so scheduling and budgeting is huge. Melissa and I take a look at it at least the next 12 months. What does our travel look like for the next 12 months? What can we budget for? So we know we're going to budget this year for Maison et Objet in Paris, but we're not going to go to Salone in Milan. Like, that's just, those two things are not going to happen in the same year. So we budgeted for Maison, and I can tell you, I bet we spent, just so you have an idea, I don't know, $15,000 to go, all in with air, transport, ground transport, lodging, just dinners. It's a lot. But it's just an incredible market. So when you're going to book, you can do it a few different ways. I'm kind of a control freak, so I like to book my own flights.
It's great because I don't like it, so I'm glad you do it.
Yeah, so I love booking it myself because I just, like I said, I'm a control freak. So I either do it online directly at the airline's website. So your airline's going to be different than ours. It depends on where you're based. So obviously our headquarters is Houston, Texas. So we are a United hub. So we're going to book directly with United. You can also book if you have a concierge through your credit card. They can do it as well. And then you may have some additional protection through that credit card. I do both. It just depends on where I'm going. So yeah, I like to control all of that myself. We do work with call her a travel designer. She's wonderful because she really curates what we're doing. She can also book our flights. I typically will book the flights, share that information with her. She'll book everything else. Okay. She can book transport. She books the lodging, all of those things. So it really
what cards are you using? Like, are there like a couple travel cards that we use as a business?
Yes. The best one is American Express, in my opinion. And you can have the platinum card. So that way you have access to their lounges.
Oh, yes.
And that's a great,
to do.
Yeah. If you travel a lot, getting a platinum card is huge. We had one for years until we got upgraded to a Centurion card. And that card is does everything. Like if you travel, that is a card for you because it has like perk after perk after perk. But again, we also have a United Visa. So because our hub is here in Houston and Denver too, which I fly out of a lot, that United card is huge because you can get, if you travel enough, you fly enough, you can get 1K status.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm all about the status on the airline.
Yeah, we're all about those points too. Use those points. You mentioned a little bit about perks. I mean, being able to sit in the club or the lounge before your flight, just like that's a part of the trip for me. Like it's kind of just like a mini vacation. Again, we have young families. So
yeah, exactly. So when you get that alone time anywhere you are, it's amazing. I'd agree with that. And I usually, I can get, I travel a ton, but I still can get travel anxiety. Yeah. And so I like to show up early. And just like Melissa said, just chill in the lounge. And if you have a like status on an airline, you can hang out in their lounge. But we use the Amex lounge quite a bit, just depending on where you are in the country. And if they have one, it's really nice. And so if you have a platinum card or higher, you can have access to the lounge.
Mm-hmm. And that's great. You can stop in, you can have a bite to eat, you can have a drink, cocktail, if that's what you're interested in.
If you're going international, those lounges are fabulous. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I've probably sat in most of them. And some of them have just a full dining room where you can just have like a lovely dinner. And it's just like sitting in a restaurant inside an airport lounge. The American Express lounges in most airports are really nice. And they can get overcrowded is the only drawback. If you have a platinum card, you don't have specialty seating. Most of the time you're going to get access and have space. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they get overcrowded. I've seen lines out the door. So it was
really busy the last time we were there.
It really just depends. If you have a Centurion card or have access to one, you always have seating. You skip the line. They take you to specialty seating. So that's a really nice perk. But we've flown Air France, KLM, United Polaris, if you are flying business class, and we often use points, Melissa mentioned points. So a lot of times you can just spend the cash and then use your points to upgrade to business. If we're going international or a flight longer than a couple of hours, I'm probably going to go for business class. If you have business class, those are really, really nice lounges.
Yeah. And I mean, I think if you can swing it, please do it. Like there's something so wonderful about being able to travel comfortably. You're already traveling for work and being on. That's exhausted. So difficult. So trying to make it as comfortable as you can possibly afford, I would go for that every single time. And speaking of comfort, I think one of the things that you and I agree on, which maybe the team does not, is, okay, one thing, I always take an Uber to the airport. I never park there because I don't want to deal with it. We're also going through construction right now at IAH, and so you don't even know if you'll be able to park without a reservation. But second, carry-ons all the time.
Everywhere.
Hate checking a bag.
Anywhere and everywhere, take your carry-on only. And so we have the same carry-on. It's in a way bag. Uh-huh. The bigger one, So some European airlines will not let you bring that size carry-on onto the flight. Most of the time you're going to get away with it, especially if you're flying business class. They'll look past it. Sometimes they won't. They will not. So there's a regular carry-on from away that makes every flight. It's regulation. And then there's one that's called the bigger, which is the one we have. It's better, but sometimes they'll kick you off. So not kick you off, but you'll have to gate check. And then I know you have another piece that sits on top of yours.
Yes. I just like having all of my stuff with me. Like I put my laptop in there, of course, like my makeup bag. Even if I'm checking a bag, I never check my makeup because I feel like as long as I have my wallet and my phone and my makeup, I'm going to be just fine.
Yeah. That's all you need. Your passport,
my passport,
your phone,
for sure.
Your makeup. That's it. Your pills,
yep.
Whatever you need.
Although we did have to bring checked baggage to Paris because it was snowing. And so it was snowing and it was sleeting and the weather was just very variable. And so it was really difficult for us to.
There was no choice because I haven't taken a checked bag in 10 years.
And we complained about it the entire time.
I took one to Paris and it was just horrific. So if you can travel with nothing but carry-ons, do it every single time. Like that is literally the first time in 10 years I've done it and I will never do it again. I will just sacrifice.
Oh, well, because they destroyed our luggage too. So that's a whole other story.
But then if you're going on a long trip, I use a big kind of bag that goes over the top of my away bag and it's from Low & Sons, L-O & Sons. And that thing has gone with me everywhere. I've done 6 weeks in Europe with just those 2 bags.
Oh my gosh.
Carry-ons only.
So you're better than me.
If you can do laundry where you are. So the Low & Sons bag has shoe storage underneath, and then you can fit a ton of stuff in the top. So it's really great. You really, like, if you need more than that, you don't. You just don't. Just stop.
You're
fine.
Over-consuming.
You're fine.
That's what we're saying.
Yeah, right. You're okay.
So one of the things that we did that was different in Paris is that we actually stayed in an apartment this time instead of a hotel. And I think that there are definitely perks to both, depending on what you're really looking for and what you're trying to do. I could see staying in either one.
Yeah, and I do both. It's a toss-up.
Yeah.
So, like for example, if I'm going to Vegas for a market, I'm going to stay in a hotel.
Oh, sure.
You're going to stay in a hotel. But Paris, for example, and if you're watching this and not listening, you're seeing us scrolling through where we stayed in Paris. We had a flat that was just gorgeous. And we were right in the middle of Saint-Germain and it was walkable. It was exactly what we needed. And it was probably about the same price as if we'd gotten 2 separate hotel rooms, maybe less because the taxes were lower, I believe.
Right.
And it's just really cool. It had a huge living room, dining room, 2 separate bedrooms. We each had our own bathroom, so we had our own space.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, we both really struggle sleeping when we travel and had no issues sleeping in that apartment. It was just so perfect, so comfortable, and so good for what we were trying to do.
Yeah, and so you can find apartments in multiple ways. Like there's VRBO, there's this one was through a company called One Fine Stay, but we rented it or we found it. We didn't actually find it. Our travel designer, Julia, who is lovely, presented us with like 4 different options, meeting our requirements. And this is one we chose because it had a beautiful art collection. The location was sick.
It was perfect. And somebody met us. Our budget. Somebody met us there and gave us a tour of the apartment.
Checked us in.
Like, so, hey, these are the keys. This is where the trash goes. So it wasn't like you were just coming in and
winging it,
left to your devices and not know exactly what to do. So it was just really nice from start to finish. Now we've also gone to Paris and stayed in a hotel, and that was nice too. I just felt like for this particular trip, it was really nice to stay in an apartment. Like we could wake up and have breakfast together, end the day together. We could work there together. Like we even sat in on a webinar together, and instead of having to like find a lounge in the hotel or cramping up in because the hotel rooms in Paris are fairly small. So
tiny. Depending on how much you're going to spend on said room. But yes, the ones that we've rented for business travel have been
You're not
very small.
Spending it with 2 people on a webinar in these rooms.
No. So I think if you can get a flat, if you're traveling overseas, or even like to a large city like New York and you want to stay in Soho, for example, like that could be a really great place to get an apartment.
Yeah. So let's talk about the fun stuff that we do. Because obviously, if you're going on a business trip, there's the not so fun stuff. You got to go to the market. You may have a business meeting, which luckily I feel like in our industry, everybody's really wonderful. Yeah. But just from a fun perspective, what we did for our Paris trip was we actually planned it out with buffer days time for naps. We didn't overschedule ourselves, which I think you can often have the fear of like, oh, I've got to do this. I've got to do everything. Like I'm only going to be here for 4 days. I need to jam pack everything. But what ends up happening, I think in that instance is that you do so much that you don't enjoy it.
I agree. I think we've done it that way and learned our lesson. So, I've taken so many trips where I'm just back to back to back and every 15 minutes is accounted for. So I think that I've got to give us a pat on the back for the last trip too, that we took to Maison Objet because we really took it relatively easy. Yeah. We managed to pack a ton of stuff in still. We were going from, we're saying it was easy, but we went from probably 8 a.m. every day to maybe, I don't know, we had parties some nights until midnight. Oh, Melissa stayed out with one of our reps until 2. And I was like, dude, enjoy, I'm out. So it can be really long days, but in the middle of those days, we would get our morning stuff accomplished. We would come back to the apartment and chill for a couple hours, 3 hours sometimes.
Yeah, because you got to plan for that jet lag.
Oh my gosh,
like you need to plan for a nap because then you're worthless for that dinner that your vendor, invited you to that was so important, but you jam-packed so much throughout the day. You're just like, well, I can't enjoy it now.
Plan for downtime and plan for a buffer day. So we landed on I want to say it was a Wednesday, and we had that entire day was just free. We had nothing that day. And that was it was so lifesaver because we were able to come in and like nap a little bit, get out, have some dinner, and then just like recharge and really hit it hard the next day.
Yeah, no, it was very smart. And I think a good thing about that too is also being spontaneous. So Laura mentioned that I got to stay out until 2 a.m. one night. And what's crazy is that the whole entire industry in Paris is doing the exact same thing.
Everyone.
So what's funny is that you'll see your vendors that you see here in Houston or in Dallas, and they're partying out until 2 a.m.
It's so fun.
It was so great. De Gournay is one of our vendors. We need to use them a lot more. They have a beautiful showroom in Paris and a very special apartment at the top floor. And I didn't know anything about them having a party. And we ended up running into one of our reps, Emily at Culpin Associates. Shout out to her because she told us about this party.
Morning.
Oh, I missed her. But she told us about this party, and I ended up walking in there with another one of our vendors, Brian. We're just like, oh gosh, this party's kind of lame. And then we realized that it was on the top floor of this apartment. We walk up the stairs and are completely blown away by all of the people that are there. Like it just seemed like something that, I don't know, like Eric Clapton would have gone to in the 1960s or something like that. Like it was just that cool. And I think because we planned so well, I was actually able to enjoy it, maybe get a little tipsy, walk home at 2 a.m. and still be able to enjoy my day the next day.
And I think there's 2 really good points here. First of all, walk home because we knew where the majority of our events were going to be. And so that's why we got a flat so we could walk around. Like we were in that specific area and that made a huge difference.
Oh, yeah.
Second, reach out to your vendors or whoever you're working with, your partners, whatever industry you're in. If you're going to an industry conference, reach out to your people, let them know you're coming because they're going to tell you about all the really cool stuff. Like we have done some amazing things that we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. Like we went to a beautiful party at like the American Ambassador's house in Paris. Not this time, but when we went before. And like, when would you ever walk into the ambassador's home?
No,
I'm not in politics. Like I have no reason.
No, and it was where Benjamin Franklin had lived after the revolution. It was very, very cool. And yeah, we were just invited on a whim from a vendor.
On a whim. It's crazy. So you can get invited to some really great things just by putting it out there. Like, hey, I'm going to be there. Going to like beautiful dinners, that kind of thing. And it's the networking and just really connecting with people that you don't get to see all the time.
Yeah.
And even if you're seeing those people, regionally or in your city, most of the conferences, some of them are regional, but the big ones are national. And so you're going to get to interact with a larger swath of the industry. And I think that's huge.
Yeah. No, we're still a very people-focused industry, a very relationship-focused industry. So the more people you know, just really the better it is. And you talked about dinners. Like we also always plan one dinner that's just us. Sometimes we'll invite. It's nice to have a vendor.
Our fun friends
are the fun people. We invite them. But we went to one really nice dinner in Paris. We went to Maison, which I think she has 2 Michelin stars.
Yeah, it's Helen de Rose.
Helen de Rose. It was so good from start to finish. Definitely not something we do on every business trip.
No, absolutely not. This is a really special dinner. And what's great about it too is it's not just like, of course we're going because we want to have a beautiful dinner, but it's also really interesting to sit and have service of this caliber and then think about how we could apply that to our own business. And really think about those lessons, because the service in this restaurant is impeccable. And I would challenge anyone to find something like this anywhere else in the world. Like it was really incredible. So it's like making time to do that kind of thing and treat yourself, but also like looking at it from the perspective of your business and how you can take those lessons and apply it.
Yeah. Sorry, just getting lost in those images. I was being like taken back there. It was so wonderful. But I think there's a good, like, I mean, overall, one of the things is to try and have fun when you're on a business trip. Like you can do it, like, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you own your own business. I think so many times we're just like, oh, I have to do this. I need to go on this trip. And then we turn it into something that's just like an obligation and it's not any fun. True. And so we really approach it. And of course, we've learned this over time. Like there have definitely been some business trips that we've been on that were just business. But we've realized they're just not as enjoyable. So we will like take that extra day, put in a little bit more effort, invest a little bit more. And yes, that can be really hard, especially if times are tight. But man, just the return that you get on spending a little bit more time and even a little bit more money is invaluable, especially when you're overseas.
Yeah, I agree. And then, like Melissa was saying, allow time for spontaneity. Don't book back to back, but I am a planner. I don't know if I mentioned this. I get anxiety. So I do make some plans ahead of time, just like reaching out to our vendors so you can get invited to these beautiful dinners.
That's de Gournay. It was
and these wonderful parties. Set your appointments ahead of time, but just leave some, like just pad your time so you're not just running around like a crazy person. But at least you have some structure to the trip.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's important.
So that's it. I mean, we just relived that whole entire trip. It was so much fun.
It was wonderful. It was a wonderful trip. And like coming up, we have, potentially KBIS, Kitchen and Bath Industry Show in Vegas at the end of this month. I may take a last minute trip to that.
It's fun. I mean, I haven't been to big KBIS, but I have been to the furniture market that's there. And we went one year. It always happens around this time of year. So we were there for my birthday one year. I mean, and that's really cool too. Like you're doing a business trip, but it's in Las Vegas. Like what a better city to be in.
I know, it's so fun. So we have this one coming up, KBIS. It, I think, is concurrent with the furniture show this year. So we can do both. Our design directors are actually heading to Spain to visit with one of our favorite vendors, Cosentino. So that's happening.
Get into the design industry. That's the big takeaway from this podcast.
Pretty great. Then we go to High Point, North Carolina for the furniture show.
In April.
Yep. We have some other stuff coming up. So that just gets us through like Q1 and Q2. It's a lot. It's a lot. I really want to go to Salone. It's not happening.
That'll happen next year. Check back in for us to talk about that next year.
Yep. So if you want to hear all about our trip to Salone next year, then be sure to follow and like. And we're on Instagram. We're on all the socials under Design Dasher. And that way you can see what we're up to and have a conversation.
Yeah. Something else on Design Dasher that we'll have up is a guide to Maison. So if you're really looking forward to going to this market, because it is absolutely one of the best things that we get to do.
It's pretty great
in this business. We have a guide up there on our journal that you can check out from start to finish, how to handle it well, successfully.
Yep. And if you need any help, you just reach out to us and we will tell you all about it.
Obviously, we love to talk about it.
Yeah. So. Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next Design Dash podcast.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for listening. Make sure to check out our next podcast coming live next week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. In the meantime, you can find us and more wonderful stories like these on designdash.com. And make sure to follow us at Design Dasher on Instagram and TikTok. Till next time.